So what are some reasons why you want to avoid moving to Chattanooga, Tennessee? Well, this applies not just to Chattanooga, but maybe to a lot of different places in Tennessee, because I've lived in Nashville, I've lived in Chattanooga, I've lived in all over the state because I grew up here. So when I was age 7, I moved from Florida to Tennessee, and then I moved out to California and back because California is crazy. And I had to move back, but I got married, and so it was a little bit of a plus out there. But out here in Tennessee, boy, it's a totally different story. The terrain and the weather are completely different than any other place in the country, really. So you have this very hilly terrain in Tennessee, and you have a very more tropical of a climate here in Tennessee as well, as California wasn't very tropical. Also in Tennessee, they do have a risk of earthquake. We have a big fault that runs along Mississippi River, and so that hasn't happened in 100 years. But they say we're due for one, and it was devastating when it happened. But we rarely have an earthquake out here. I've experienced one maybe in Tennessee once in my lifetime, and it was one of those kind where you are in bed and you're like, what was that? Did the curtain shake? I'm not sure what's going on. It wasn't extreme and out of the ordinary like California's earthquakes. So what are some other things that might make you want to avoid Chattanooga? Well, tornadoes. We do have tornadoes that come through. It can be very devastating for a very small portion of the city. And it's still very tragic when one comes through. But this doesn't usually happen. If it does, it's usually around Easter time, because when the winds are changing, hot and cold are mixing, and it's spinning things around a bit. And so people have weather radios out here. You want to have a little weather radio so that you can be notified by the system. And all it is, it listens for a specific amount of beeps on the radio, and then it turns up the volume so you can hear the weather broadcast to tell you, hey, by the way, there's a tornado coming. And so people have basements here. They have, it's not like Oklahoma or a tornado alley, really. I mean, you're going to get one no matter what, it seems, out there. At least that's what the news makes you think. But out here, once in a blue moon, you're going to get a tornado, and it's going to come through some part of your city somewhere. Whether it's up in Nashville or down here in Chattanooga, Knoxville, Memphis, somewhere around here is going to get a tornado every couple years. Another natural disaster we have here is flooding. So Chattanooga is based on a very specific area of the state. You know, all cities kind of follow the rivers. They follow the water. You know, where there's water, there's life. And so, in the very beginning, when people were homesteading here in the States, they were developed around the water, because that's where you got your shipments, that's where you got your drinkable water, all this stuff. Because there's a lot of low areas in Chattanooga, we tend to have some flooding, not just in Chattanooga, but anywhere in Tennessee. In fact, the Tennessee established the TVA, or Tennessee Valley Authority, to kind of manage the water in this area. So it has a government arm that manages the water systems that happen, from the dam to levees to all the different things that control water pumps and things like that. And so Tennessee Valley Authority, which is, by the way, a great company to work for, I hear, they really do a good job of that. But it's something you got to worry about, because if you live too close to the river in a flood zone, then you're going to have problems with water someday. And so you want to pay attention to those flood zones when you're buying a home. By the way, I'm a real estate agent, so I know a lot about those maps and where to get those. So if you're curious about flood zones and how to know if you're in a flood zone or not, so you don't have to pay the extra insurance that comes along with that mortgage because you're in a flood zone, you can look me up. I do this 24/7, and I help people out finding land, finding a house in Chattanooga, and you can get my info right there on the screen, or down here, or over here. Anyways, but Tennessee really has more than just low areas. They have these huge ripples, and it's much different than, like I said, than Florida is, where you go all the way up in the top, you can live on top of these ripples. Because thousands of years ago, there was this giant climactic thing that happened, and it pushed the land in. You can see that it folded up and down like this. And when that happened, it created these beautiful areas for people to live on. And so a lot of people want to see a view. They want to see some trees. They want to see that beautiful fall weather where all the trees turn yellow, red, orange, and they can see that for miles and miles. That's Tennessee. And so you can get out of the flood zones, which is right close to the river, and you can go over to these beautiful areas that you can see for miles. And if that's something that's appealing to you, then definitely look for that, because there's a lot of that out here. Another thing you want to think about when you come out here is the income level. The average income is about $77,000 a year. That's 17% lower than the average income in the United States. Now, granted, that's taken into account. You got New York and Hawaii and San Francisco that have their ridiculous $300,000 average or whatever it is cost of living. But Tennessee is a little more normal. And because of that, too, because we're a little below average, it's easier to live out here. Things are cheaper out here. You go to the grocery store, you go to the gas station. First thing I noticed when I came out here is the gas prices were about a third of California. I remember during the big pandemic that we had a serious problem with gas prices. They were going up to $6, $7, $8 per gallon. Out here, $2.50 a gallon at some gas stations right now. And I scratch my head and go, how is that even possible? That it's such big difference between the two. Are they having trouble transporting it out there to California from wherever it is coming from, Texas? I don't know. But it's something to think about when coming out here, that your income level will reduce a little bit if you're coming from some of those states that make a lot of money. And maybe that's good for you because a lot of people work from home. And if you work from home, then it doesn't matter where you live. You'll still make the same income, and you can come out here and you can have the most beautiful area that you can imagine to live in. Things are much different than living in California, where everyone stayed to themselves. There was no real community. I had a couple neighbors that were just amazing, by the way. But out there in California, a lot of people just say, hey, stay out of my way. I don't want to have anything to do with anything right now. Don't talk to me. Out here, it was sometimes hard to get things done because your neighbors want to come over and say hello and talk story for hours and hours. I remember when I first came in, we were trying to redo our driveway, and we had one neighbor come over after the other, and we love it. Don't get me wrong, because I know my neighbors will listen to this. But we loved talking, but we were just not used to it at the time, because we were going, why are these people so friendly out here? So that's something to think about when you're coming out. It's just cheaper to live out here, and so people have more time to spare, and they talk story. It's beautiful. This might be a con to half of you. It might be a pro to half of you, too. Out here, politics is a lot different. So coming from Florida, coming from California, I noticed that it was very, very much more conservative than progressive out here, which means you have more red than blue, whichever animal that is. I don't even remember. I'm not really a political person. But out here, you can talk more conservative, and people are more conservative-minded out here. That might be a con to you, so you got to make sure you're aware of that. There are more signs that push one side of the political spectrum than the other side. And that's and the majority of people are more conservative. So one thing we noticed when we moved from California to here, because I grew up in Tennessee, but it was mostly my education years, everything from age 7 up to age 21, 23, whatever it was. After that, I spent out on the West and came back when I was in my 30s, late 30s. And so one thing I noticed was, wow, everyone really doesn't like California out here. And it's not so much they don't like Californians, they just don't want to bring the politics to Tennessee. At least that's how it was explained to me. So when you're coming out here, make sure that you do one thing, and that's what we did, is change your license plate. Get your car license changed out immediately. Because you don't want to be put in that category. Not that you got to worry about any of that stuff, because we never had any trouble with that. People always say, you got political trouble, so you better not identify as a Californian. I don't know. I hadn't seen any problems at all. In fact, everyone was very nice to me out here. And so I wouldn't worry too much about it. But it's something to consider when you're coming out here, to make sure that if you want to be in a conservative state, that you don't try to change the people, because the people like what they got. And by the way, I tend to be more conservative myself. Another con of coming out here are taxes. You got a heavy sales tax of about a little over 9% out here. I think 9.25, I forget what the exact number is, but when you buy something, you're always surprised because there's an additional tax, almost a tithe, on your thing that you're buying straight away when you buy it from the store. So if you buy something for $7.99, all of a sudden you're almost $10. What's going on here? How is that even possible? Well, it's because you got a sales tax on there. But the reason why is because when you got a lot of people coming in for vacations to Gatlinburg, to Nashville, to Memphis to see Elvis Presley's stuff, and you got all these people coming into Tennessee to vacation, they're paying for your state income tax. So Tennessee doesn't have any state income tax. It's one of the cheapest states to live in because of that. you don't have to pay those taxes to the state. They get that elsewhere. So congratulations, people pay your taxes. And here's something else to consider when moving out here: traffic. Now, it's not going to be traffic like New York. It's not going to be even traffic like Orlando. And it's not going to be traffic, definitely nothing like Atlanta. But like any city, you're going to have traffic. And it lasts just a short while. There is construction out here, and so it makes it a little more frustrating to get around the bend in Chattanooga. But you can monitor things like the Chattanooga Traffic Tracker. You can also look at Apple Maps or Google Maps to see what's going on in the traffic area that you're planning to go through, so you don't get stuck. Because sometimes they shut down the highway just for a second, and it causes absolute craziness to go around some of these back roads to get there. The plus side is it's beautiful. So even if you're sitting in traffic and you're not really breathing in a lot of smog because it's such a country area, and you also get to see all the scenic views that you don't normally get to if you're traveling and you're focused on the road. Another thing you should consider is that if you come out to Chattanooga, you're going to notice that it's a little more tranquil, it's a little more secluded, a little more isolated than the rest of the area. Like I said, people are social though. But at the same time, you can find a place that is just in the middle of nowhere and you're happy to be there. And that can be a con for some people that are more social. They might want to go to the gym more. They might want to go out and find that Starbucks. They might want to just hang out at Jamba Juice or whatever it is that you're curious about. I haven't seen very many Jamba Juices around here. But the truth is that you're never really far from a shopping mall or a local eatery in Tennessee. It's just people scatter more in Tennessee. In fact, when we came out here, one of the things that we were pretty surprised at is we were trying to find where the country stayed and began and continued. Out here, the laws aren't as stringent as they were in California when building. And so you might have a farm right here, and then all of a sudden a subdivision, and then a farm on the other side, and then all of a sudden a network of subdivisions, and then another farm over here, and then a subdivision. We were going, we wanted to get away from the subdivisions. And we want to be more isolated. And so some people like that, some people don't, but that's something to consider when moving out to Tennessee is that no matter if you want isolation or if you want to be close to something, you can have both, but you're going to be in a little bit of a mix. Another thing to consider when moving to Chattanooga is that you're not going to have a lot of business opportunities as you would in like New York, Los Angeles, or some of the bigger cities like Chicago, Atlanta. These places have a lot of availability, not only for business, but for secondhand marketplace stuff. Out in California, we were really surprised at how big Craigslist marketplace really was. You might, if you're familiar with a smaller city, or maybe you're on more of the East Coast, you can still get stuff off marketplace. But we were surprised coming out here that, wow, people want top dollar for their used stuff, and it's not good. So out in California, I don't know what the deal was. Maybe they were just too wealthy or something. They would get rid of their brand new equipment for cheap, a third of the price. And we were like, this is great. We can practically live off of not going to Walmart or anything. We'll just find it on Craigslist on Marketplace, because we don't mind having some hand-me-downs. We don't mind having a little bit of things that have been in someone else's house for a little while. But they were beautiful. Out here, we had a hard time doing that, because we're not going to buy your rusty wheelbarrow for $10 less than they sell it at the store. We're going to go buy a new one. So business out here, not only in the secondhand business, but also in wholesale business. Out here, there's a lot of wholesale businesses. You have pallet businesses. They just put out pallets of stuff, and people go through them. They find anything from laptops to iPhones to just notebook that is on sale. That things have been returned from either Home Depot or whatever it is. And so that's a much bigger thing out here than the secondhand version of Marketplace. Something to think about, because it's a little different. Another issue you might consider when moving into Chattanooga or into Tennessee in general is the pollen. Out here we have a lot of pollen, ragweed, pine, you name it. In the springtime, it's rampant. And my wife, she takes some medicine in order to mitigate that a bit, but it's something that some people just have to deal with. I don't really have that problem at all. And some people are just more apt to allergies than others. So if you come out here, you might want to come out during the spring just to see how it's like. But for the most part, most people don't have any trouble if you've lived in the mid-United States before. It's no big deal. There's always challenges when moving from one state to another, and I'm here to help you as best I can, so make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit that little bell icon so you're notified when I produce another video. And you can also contact me if you're in town looking for a house. My information's right here. You can just give me a call, give me a text, or you can take a move survey that's in my description below and in the comments, and we will see you around town.